Hey,
Hi, Ron.
how are you? Getting a little bit of feedback there. I'm still going to turn down my sound.
I think that's from my side.
That's okay, but that's all right. It's getting better now.
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll have to end one of them.
I think, yeah, if you end your other one, that would be probably best.
All right, then. Just a moment.
Or maybe just mute it. There you go. That's working.
Yeah, I put off the one on the screen on the computer, and so I'm just using the one on the phone now.
Okay. Well, pleased to meet you.
Right, yes. I just found out about the geoscience group today.
Uh-huh.
So I just added it on to my circles. So my background, like I've said, I went to university in Nigeria where the geology department had a great interest in hard rock. Well, it was kind of located in hard rock territory anyway. So that's Nigeria, northeast, Maiduguri, close to the Cameroon Mountains and all that.
Okay, interesting. I had a colleague, I taught here at Fort Hays State University, and one of my colleagues in the last year is from Cameroon originally. She's doing petroleum geology now. She has done a PhD in Oklahoma.
Ah, well, I stopped that. I haven't registered for a PhD yet. I just moved to England.
Okay.
I had an MSc in environmental geosciences, also in Nigeria. I really did enjoy metamorphic petrology. The whole sort of petrology was very fascinating. The soft rock wasn't as much, but well, as you've mentioned already, in Nigeria the interest is oil, so of course there's a lot more drive for soft rock sedimentary sort of petrology and all that.
I can understand that. What most of the oil in Nigeria is in the south, in the Niger Delta.
Yes, it is.
What's the geology like in the northeast?
Well, in the northeast, you've got sedimentary, and of course there's some igneous and metamorphic as well. Because of the proximity to the Cameroon Mountains, you've got some what's called the basalt. There's some basalt flows there, and then a large sedimentary basin, the Borno basin or the Chad basin, as you will call it. So that's got some nice rocks in that as well. So yeah, it's a mix, as it were.
Okay.
But that's part of the highlands, but then it grades very well into a nice big basin where they've been looking for oil. But as geologists always have it, there's oil in the Chadian side of the Chad basin, but none in the Nigerian side of the Chad basin. So overheating, stuff like that.
What age are the sedimentary rocks in that region? Do you know?
For the sedimentary rocks are all, hold on. Just a moment.
In the, I'm trying to think.
The Cretaceous.
Yeah, okay, so that would be the Alocagan, that would be the failed rift arm when the Atlantic Ocean opened up.
Correct.
Okay, good. Neat. I actually lived growing up in a failed rift basin in New Jersey, just outside New York City, the Newark Basin, which is parallel to the Atlantic Ocean, but it's a failed rift basin on the side of the Atlantic. So we lived in somewhat similar rocks.
All of them, they are contemporary, as it were. And with regards to source rocks for the Niger Delta, we'd always have to look at that field rifting and how that sort of made sediments come down. The field rifting, triple junction, and all that stuff. So it's an important consideration in looking at the history of the sediments in the south as well.
So you're in England now. Did you go straight from your master's to England now, or are you working? Are you in university?
Well, this was the thing. I had an interest in academia. I actually wanted to lecture
Mm-hmm.
So I did my MSc at the University of Calabar.
Mm-hmm.
That's in southern Nigeria. And when I finished, I was hoping to be employed there because I have an affinity for learning and dispensing knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work out. So I then took a job in the private industry, in the oil industry.
Okay.
So I then moved to Lagos. So I worked with another company there called Sahara.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an internship with BG Nigeria. And I did that for about 2 years.
Okay.
And then I moved to England, but I haven't gotten a job in geoscience yet in England,
Okay.
as it were.
Well, England seems like an interesting place to study geology. You're in southern England, I'm guessing?
Yep, in Essex.
Okay. Have you had a chance to travel much around the country, see any of the geology in that region?
I've been around. I'm supposed to be going to Scotland later on, but I've been in the what you call it? I've been into the Midlands to where Wastwater is, what's it called? Camp in Cumbria. I've been in Cumbria.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, been around a bit. I was in Wales a few months ago. The month leading into the new year, I was in Wales.
Excellent.
Traveled around there a bit.
Excellent.
So yeah, got some lovely views. We decided not to travel outside so much until we finish exploring inside, because you get on some sites and you see some views and you're like, is that England? Oh, we haven't been there.
I haven't been to England myself, but I've seen lots and lots of pictures of it, and of course, a lot of the early geologists, worked in England, so a lot of that's in the kind of the lore and the history of science.
So the geologic, most of it is named after parts in England,
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And we've had a number of English and, European geologists as well that have come on the office hours. I've been holding these. Well, I haven't held one for a while. But,
okay.
I've been holding these office hours kind of on originally on a weekly basis. Actually, I was originally doing it twice a week, Monday and Thursday. Thursdays just weren't as well attended. And then my schedule became kind of hectic, and so I had to drop a few weeks. But I recorded a couple of these. I'm recording this one too. So
when it's recorded?
Well, what I'm doing is I've got a laptop computer over here to my left, and I've got a second Google Plus account on there, and it's kind of listening silently as a
so that's
partner.
So,
yeah, this is a very low-tech, high-tech, low-tech, whatever. I'm not doing it through the official Google Plus recording mechanism. I don't have access to that yet, but
okay.
I'm using Camtasia to record over there, and I've had mixed success with that. Sometimes it records the whole thing and does just great. Sometimes I end up with all kinds of bad echoes, or it cuts it off halfway through. But anyway, I'll probably edit it down this evening and clip out some of the silence and then post it up to YouTube.
Okay, that's great. Well, as it turns out, I haven't got any questions, so to speak.
Well, that's fine. That's okay.
Wrap it all in a circle.
You're more than welcome to just sit around and lurk if you want. We'll see if anybody else shows up. Like I said, it's been a while since I've had one of these, so not as many people are paying close attention to Google Plus these days as they were a few months ago. So we'll see if anybody else shows up. Usually a couple of people straggle in after a half hour or so. You're welcome to hang around, or if you got to be doing other things, that's fine too.
Oh no, I'm done with what I was supposed to do because I work at a dental practice as the administrator, so I prefer to come in after working hours and clean up the database and sort out some accounting issues. Yeah. But yeah, I'm always keen to discuss geology. I love the earth, and the more I understand about it, the better. And any true scientists, I always believe that our current views can be modified by, more available data. And yeah,
I love having these hangouts in part because you do get people from all over the world. Now, the time of day that I hold these, I haven't really had an opportunity to get anybody from, say, India or the Asian region because it's the middle of the night for them. But, you know, I've had folks from New Zealand, from Australia, from all over Europe. I think you're the first person of African origin, anyway, that's actually been on. So it's actually great to have a chance to see some different perspectives on things.
Oh yeah, that's
most of what I hear about, you know, Nigerian geology is all with the oil industry, and so I never really hear about the rest of the country much.
Well, it's the bread and butter, if I may say so. Yeah, but then interestingly, in the South, where I did my studies, my MSc, they've got hard rocks there. In fact, I did prospecting for, what was it? I think it was barite, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
I did some prospecting. I used the VLF-EM method, which was part of what I used for writing my thesis anyway, my master's project, because I used VLF-EM in tandem with resistivity to delineate leachate plumes, high conductivity leachate plumes around the waste disposal site. But then I also used it while working with the university consultancy team to map barite and do some mineral exploration around there. And it worked quite well. The contrast was good. So there is still, but it's underdeveloped. It's mainly, how you say, not official mining, if you know what I mean, because the government is really distracted with the oil, so there's not a lot of attention being paid to the solid minerals industry. So anybody that has his mind to go and look for it.
The interest in barite would generally be for use in drilling muds, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. Well, that makes sense. You know, source it locally if you. Yeah. Hey, we got somebody else coming on.
Okay.
Lee, hi. How are you? Looks like Lee's still connecting there.
Checking face and hair.
How are you, Lee? Oh, perhaps he's muted. I don't know.
Right.
So,
well,
Lee, go ahead. Sorry. And Marv, welcome. How are you?
Hey, guys, what's up? I may not be able to hear you because I don't have my Bluetooth on.
You're coming through quietly, but we're able to hear you. This technology is always a little bit of a challenge here.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm not getting that.
And there he goes. Just coming to learn something. Well, Lee, we were talking a few minutes ago about Nigerian geology, and I was learning something. So I don't know if you got any questions you want to add to it, or we're kind of waiting for somebody else to show up and spark a little conversation here.
Oh, dear. Is Lee there?
Yeah, he's typing.
Oh, okay.
And you see he's asking if you're a geologist.
Yes, I am. I better look for how to type back now. Hold on, where is it?
Oh, that's going to be tricky on the phone, isn't it?
I'm sure.
Well, he can hear you, so you're free to talk.
Great, but I need to see if I can view what he's typing.
Okay, so he just simply asked, are you a geologist? And Lee, you're muted, so we can't hear you at the moment.
That should be okay now.
There you go. Now that's better.
I got this switch on here, and I bump into it once in a while.
Oh, I've done that myself.
And I have a phone call. I'll be right back.
Oh, fair enough.
Okay, so that sorts that out.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Production.
freelance geologist, what's that?
Well, that's saying I'm currently unemployed.
Okay.
So, I mean, geology is obviously my profession. No, I was teaching. I've taught for 11 plus years at the university level, and I ended up not getting tenure in my last job. And I was looking to try and explore some other possible career paths. And so I've been applying to different sorts of jobs. I've actually just got a interview for another teaching job, but looks like Lee's back, so we'll let him take it away.
Oh, nothing. I just now, Ron, you're the gentleman in Kansas. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in Kansas, Hayes, Kansas right now, for a little while longer, perhaps not too much longer. Getting ready to sell my house here and applying for jobs elsewhere. But, yeah, still in Hayes.
I used to whiz by Hayes on my way to Colorado.
Yes, indeed. That's pretty much what everybody does. Very few reasons to stop other than getting gas, maybe sleeping over for the night.
Yep. Stop and get gas.
Yeah, we're right on the
Is it
interstate.
Akpo? Is that how you pronounce your name, Akpo?
That's close enough. Apple.
What are you on, an iPad or a phone or something?
A Google phone, yes, the Galaxy Nexus.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
So are you in the oil industry, Akpo?
Not right now, I'm not. I was until 2 years ago. I left to move to England, but I have more interest in environmental geoscience, land remediation, and things like that.
So what is the general interest in Nigeria in those kinds of things? Is the government supportive? Is the population supportive?
It's an emerging sort of field right now, especially with regards to standardizing and things like EIAs. Yeah, coming into the main now with regards to planning for any project. You've got to have EIAs and all sorts of surveys being done. And then,
what, environmental impact, is that what you mean?
yes, and related things.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so they're coming into the main in Nigeria. So the field for environmental applications is opening up. There's a lot more awareness about it and responsibility for those who are going to go into constructing housing developments. What's the history of the land, and what any safety concerns with the gas activities.
Would you say the environmental, the push for environmental, is that coming from the government primarily, or from the people primarily, or is industry actually pushing this as maybe a counterbalance to some of the excesses that have gone on in the past?
Right. Well, you've got a lot of, because of globalization, you've got a lot of foreign investors who have a way of doing things that aspects of them. And so they bring this sort of practices down to them to get it good. It's line with the
I think I'm losing sound on you. Maybe it's we're getting a little feedback there.
Okay, I can say it again.
That's better.
Area is from where they're coming from, and if you're going to work here or work in Nigeria, sorry, you have to work elsewhere because of the accountability and the board and all that. So they bring it on, and you just have to follow through. For example, my MSc project was surveying for spread of leachate plumes, that's contaminant plumes, around the waste disposal site. And unconfined waste disposal site doesn't really exist in many countries. Most of you have landfills. Landfill, but in Nigeria we still have unconfined open waste dump sites. It's only recently that we're beginning to understand, but it's coming into people's focus to mitigate against such problems and move on into protecting the groundwater resource and things like that.
Good. Yeah.
Whereabouts in Nigeria are you located?
Oh, I'm not in Nigeria right now. I'm in England.
Oh, okay, okay.
I moved to England, so a lot of my experience with geology is Nigerian, if I may say so.
Yeah.
I was originally going to comment that it's a little late in Nigeria, and then I heard you say that you were in England. So yeah, that is to say,
right now we're at the same time because we're in summertime, so it's at the same time as that last week. Yes, we were 1 hour behind Nigeria.
Somehow I would have expected Nigeria to be a little further east, but I guess not.
No, we're about the same time. We're at the same time right now.
Yeah.
So it's almost 10:30 here, so it's too late in Nigeria anyway.
Winding down at the end of the day.
So, where are you in England then?
In Essex.
Essex, okay.
Yes. Not from London, as it were. Probably about 20 or 30 miles away from London.
Well, I'm a dedicated Anglophile, so, but I haven't been back for several years. I'm starting to miss it a little bit. Is it true? Something I picked up on the radio this morning. They're having quite a water shortage in England at the moment. Is that?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of ice. There wasn't a lot of snow, and the rains haven't been that much. There is a concern about drought to some extent, and so we've been told we can't use our hoses indiscriminately and try to conserve on water. So, although many people moaned, some moaned about we had a week of snow. That was all, really. Of course, that would affect, the recharge and all that. So they're very concerned about it, and it doesn't look like we're going to have as much rain as last year.
The rest of Europe got a very cold winter. Did England get that, or were you kept kind of warm by the jet stream, by the Gulf Stream there?
It was cold for a bit, but with regards to actual precipitation of snow, it was not as much.
Okay. We've had a very warm month. March just passed. We probably had more records set, high temperature records set over the course of the month than in quite a while. I haven't seen any final tallies, but it's been a remarkably warm month for us.
It's already quite warm here, actually. Quite.
Yeah. Be interesting to see if this is a fully hemisphere-wide phenomenon, or whether this is just more local. I remember the last couple of years when we were having the colder winters, it was actually warmer in the polar regions, and so you weren't getting as much ice build up. So I wonder if, as we're getting warmer, it's actually colder up in the polar regions. I think in Colorado they track this, the ice, the growth of the ice sheet, and I think it was getting back up toward more normal sort of distributions. I know in Alaska, the crab fishing fleet has actually been pushed off the fishing grounds because there's so much ice. I presume that's kind of a combination of the cold that you were getting in Europe, maybe extending over that far, and also I think some of the winds being such that the ice was being blown particularly over toward the Bering Sea end of things.
I recall I was in I believe it was Lewis in southern England a few years ago. Oh, it's quite a few years ago now. And they were having a drought and a lot of discussion about water supply and so forth. But where we stayed, our room overlooked the local bowling green for lawn bowling. And I renamed it Bowling Brown because there was no green there at all.
Yeah.
But and a lot of
That sounds like
discussion.
my own lawn most summers.
Yeah, yeah. Now, has the drought in Texas reached up to you, Ron? Is it dry there?
We've definitely had a dry winter. We had a pretty good soaking rain. I think it was last week or the week before, which definitely eased things a little bit. I know the farmers out in this part of the world were certainly very welcoming of it. It was necessary.
But you didn't have much snow cap this year, did you?
No, we didn't get much snow. We normally would not in this part of Kansas. I'm on kind of the dry end of Kansas toward Colorado. But no, there was not much snow. I guess we had a storm early in the year that was kind of large, but aside from that one, no, we didn't get a whole lot.
And I kind of forget. In your part of Kansas, is it winter wheat they plant or is it spring wheat?
Exactly that. That's our the main crop out here. I actually live in an area that is kind of between prongs of the Oglala Aquifer. So we're actually in the Smoky Hill River Basin, and that's eroded down through the Oglala Aquifer sediments. So it's mostly dryland farming here, and the winter wheat is the primary thing. If you go a little bit west of here or even north and south of here, you get up onto the area that's got Oglala Aquifer, and there's a lot more center pivot irrigation. Still largely wheat in this part of Kansas. There is some corn, but it's really much more corn in eastern Kansas.
Yeah. Well, I was raised on a farm, and we grew winter wheat. Not in Ohio anymore. It's all corn and soybeans. But I do recall we were always anxious to get a good snow cap because it was the snow and the melting of the snow gradually that really made your wheat produce. And
so we actually had that early season snow, and that was actually pretty good for it. We were right in the midst of the heaviest band of that early season snow, so we actually got a snow that lasted a couple of weeks there. We haven't had much recently, which is why they were really kind of in need of this rain. So when we got that soaking rain about a week ago, I think all the farmers were very happy about that. That won't last. They'll, of course, need some more before too long, but yeah, I think it's looking pretty good for the wheat right now. Milo is the other thing they grow out here, which is actually sorghum, but that's on a more regular annual cycle, planted in the spring, harvested in the fall.
Well, I've been over your area in an airplane a few times this winter, and get over there regularly. I'm always interested in the what you can see from the air in the way of irrigation, and I always wonder, God, there must, that water isn't being replaced, is it?
Yeah, that's for sure. And this is an issue that, there was actually some irrigation water usage legislation that went through the Kansas legislature this year. I don't remember in great detail because it's not directly affecting my livelihood here, but it's a continual struggle. The farmers that have access to that irrigation water, of course, they want to be able to use it.
Yeah.
And there's an impulse to save some for the future, but it's definitely secondary to what I need right now. So it's a tough balancing act. There's no question though that we're withdrawing more water overall than is being replaced. So it's a long-term issue. hopefully longer term than shorter term.
Yeah. Yeah. We're very fortunate here in the Miami Valley. We have a underground aquifer, an ancient riverbed that was filled in by the glaciers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm told by some of the people here, the water people, that it comes out of there pure enough. They really wouldn't have to treat it if it weren't for state law.
Right. Yeah.
But of course, the problem is the flow of those aquifers is so slow that if they get contaminated by agricultural runoff or what have you, then you've got some real problems. And there's a lot of effort to try to keep stuff out of those aquifers. And I can't think of the names of the rivers right now, but
yeah, I've lived in Wisconsin previously, so that's in glacial till, and so water was not lacking in any way there. Of course, a lot of surface water as well.
Just south of. Go ahead.
I also lived for 1 year in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is down in the karst region, and so I've not directly, but certainly been aware of the local water issues that were very different in those sorts of regions. I mean, up in Wisconsin, I taught 1 year sabbatical fill at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and just about a mile from campus there was an artesian well in glacial sediments that was it's a free-flowing artesian well. It was actually had a pipe in the ground. It was just flowing right out on the surface there. And that thing, it had to have been coming through gravels because it was just very free-flowing. I mean, it was a couple of gallons per minute coming out of that thing, if not more than that. In Bowling Green, where you got the karst, of course, the water travels through the ground very rapidly because you got all the porosity. So a whole different sort of set of problems. People in that part of the world just historically have used the sinkholes as dumping grounds, which is really not the most intelligent thing to do from a groundwater perspective. But just a closed sinkhole ends up being a pit that people think, well, we'll just throw it all in there.
Speaking of Wisconsin, related to that, we do have here just south of us, most of them are closed now, but we had some paper mills that made fine art paper because of the water supply and the purity of it. And those are most all gone now. As I don't know where they've gone. I think when I bicycled through Wisconsin, it seems to me like wasn't there a lot of paper? Appleton or
up in the Green Bay region and northern Wisconsin, you got a lot of paper mills. The Fox River that runs right through Green Bay has actually some environmental issues with mercury, which originates from the paper mills. I guess some of the bleaching process in making paper used to involve mercury, and so they've definitely got. I remember there being fishing restrictions in the Fox River.
One of the environmental issues that's facing us here in the Ohio, Pennsylvania area right now, and a lot of controversy over, is fracking.
Oh, yes.
The fracturing of the rock to pump natural gas out. And, of course, the producers are spending enormous amounts of money on advertising to convince us it's perfectly okay. And, I really don't know what I know about it, to be truthful. Some of this thing is all quite a controversy.
Well, yes, we are doing some fracking also here in Lancaster, in the UK as well. And the fracking idea, it has always been used, but probably not on this scale. That's just the main. It's always been used in trying to get hydrocarbons out of rocks that have a low permeability sort of situation. So fracking has been used for a while, but I think it's because I think for this case, it's the not in my backyard sort of situation that is causing the furore, that places that have not traditionally been oil exploration territory is now being exposed to it, and because they've seen what's gone on in where oil has been found, so everybody is up in arms, so to speak. And a lot of the things I hear about explosions coming from water taps, it seems a bit far-fetched, honestly. It does seem a bit far-fetched, because for that to actually happen, it would either mean that the pressure under which the rocks that are being flattened is so high that even up to the point where high pressure gas is coming into the water table, if it's already into the water table, then it's not really commercially viable, in my opinion, because for it to be a commercially viable hydrocarbon accumulation, gas or oil, it has to be in a trapped sort of situation. And for it to going out after fracking and leaking into the groundwater supply up to the extent that it's coming out of taps, well, I think they've probably lost a lot of it, and it would not be viable. That's been my view of it.
Well,
Curious, have you seen the movie Gasland?
Sorry?
were you asking?
Lee, particularly, have you seen the movie Gasland?
No.
Okay, see that, I think, has, if I could point to one thing that's driving a lot of the concerns about fracking, that movie certainly is it. And I actually had a chance to watch it just a week or two ago. And certainly, I mean, there was in the movie very clear evidence of exactly that, with tap water. You put a lighter next to it and then you get a big explosion. That was from specifically, well, the actual explosive tap water was actually out in Colorado, from, I think, eastern Colorado, in an area where there had been some fracking. The movie pointed out that there were other studies that suggested that might have sources other than the fracking, might not be related to that. There was another study cited there. So there is definitely debate as to how much the fracking is actually responsible for that particular type of concern. But the movie actually goes into a lot of the environmental concerns around the fracking industry, more so than just simply fracking itself, although clearly water contamination was the big central theme of that. They also showed examples from out in western Wyoming on BLM land of some of the surface venting of these hydrocarbons, and I forget the details of that now, but things like elevated ozone levels as a result of this. That there were clearly a lot of other issues that the movie raised. Now, one of the rhetorical things the movie did, and I can't really say how balanced the presentation that actually ended up in the movie was, but the way the movie was narrated, it's narrated by the producer. Basically, he grew up in Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania. When the oil companies approached his family about leasing his land, he basically went and did a little investigation before signing a lease. And one of the nearby communities had some of these wells that the locals were saying, well, now we got gas in the wells, or there's sediment in the wells that wasn't there before the fracking. And of course, you're seeing the after effect. You're seeing the fact that there is contamination in the wells. You don't know whether it was really there before or not. I mean, maybe those folks are just trying to get a free ride on the oil company's dime. But,
well,
that's hard to evaluate.
Gas has been common here in Ohio, especially the eastern part of the state, and then around where I lived for a while, up around Findlay, but that's another story. Our church has a camp over in the eastern part of the state, and we've had some oil wells on it, but before we had wells, I mean, we had that problem in the water wells there,
Right.
and there was no wells or anywhere near around of the, being able to touch off gas, bubbles of gas coming out of the water, because we had wells, and so
Well, one of the other things about the movie, and this was, I think, a really great storytelling device, and whether how honest this was, I can't really evaluate, but one of the things he did throughout the movie, he drove around and saw oil, gas really, fracking in a whole bunch of different states. But one of the other things he did throughout the movie was he called up the gas companies for comment. He tried to get the gas companies on camera, on the record, to, defend themselves. And every time, he called one of these places up, he would get the royal runaround, and nobody would talk to him. Now, that's pretty standard business procedure. Nobody really wants to be on camera saying something that could be used against them later on. But from a rhetorical standpoint, it really is just a very damning sort of thing to say that you won't put somebody on camera to make an honest defense of what's going on. And I think, it's hard to fault individual companies for not wanting to put somebody there, but it would certainly have been good if some industry spokesman had approached this head on and at least addressed the issues with the filmmakers. Now, maybe they did, and it just got left on the cutting room floor because it was not as good.
You never know.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to guess, but I would presume that if such an interview existed, they would have at least used parts of it. Yeah. And so I think the fracking industry didn't do themselves any favors by not more proactively talking to these producers of gas land. Now, they've been very vocal since then. I know that the industry has funded a couple of, movies that basically counterweigh all this. When you got the gas industry funding movies, well, how biased are those movies? You really get into this kind of an argument where you don't know who you can trust. Yeah. So, yeah, it's unfortunate the whole thing has become such a strong confrontational mess. It would have been better if there had been some open, honest communication from the beginning. And I assume that happened in a lot of places because, not everybody is having bad issues with this. But
what does science say about fracking? We can understand documentaries trying to paint a particular picture, especially if people have lived in the area and the whole not in my backyard thing. But the science of it, what's the EPA say about it in America, about fracking?
Yeah, I don't know enough details to really give a full accounting of things, but I definitely get where the two camps are coming from. Obviously, I understand the technical, why you would want to frack and basically what the process is, although, the full details of it are certainly beyond my experience. And I can certainly understand what the concerns are of the folks who are out there who may or may not be getting payments or are concerned about their water supplies. It's a legitimate concern. Whether it's justified in every individual case is certainly up for debate.
In some interviews I've seen, it seems to depend a lot, as far as the local opinion, as to whether or not you got a well on your property or not.
Yeah.
The people are making money out of it. Of course, they are all for it, but the guy down the road who can't sell his rights.
Yeah, there's an exact parallel on exactly those grounds out in my part of the world with wind power. There was a proposed wind farm for just west of the city of Hayes, up on some land that's basically cropland, a few scattered houses. And they wanted to make a big wind development because there's a power line that runs right through there, so they'd be able to tie right into it without having to, put in all sorts of new transmission lines. And a lot of the individuals that ended up on different sides of the issue were very clearly affected by whether they were or were not getting payments. And so, that clearly, it makes for a divisive sort of situation. But it's not limited to the fracking thing. It's really any kind of energy development.
We got a similar situation up here where what we call the highlands in Ohio, which aren't very high, and they aren't in Kansas either, for that matter. I mean, relatively speaking.
No.
But
the wind is strong.
I had a solution to that. I said anybody that can see those turbines ought to get a little benefit. If you can look out into and see them, then there ought to be, a little benefit for having that in your line of sight. And of course, that crops up in solar too. Say you've got a solar energy unit. What rights do you have if somebody builds next to you and shades that unit? What is it? Now I understand. Maybe you know better, Ron. I was just out in Colorado. My son has a solar unit on his house and is thinking about putting in wind. And he said I don't know if this is state or national, but the controversy out there was, can a person sell off his wind rights like you sell off your mineral rights?
Yeah.
And he said the rule there, and I don't know if this was state or national, they said, no, you can't. You can't sell your wind rights.
It's an interesting one. That specific issue has not come up here locally, at least not to my knowledge. Although definitely there has been a question of, can people put up personal wind generation, on their own property? Can you put up a tower? If you've got an acre of land, can you put up a tower in the middle of that, to generate your own wind power? And that's been somewhat controversial. Yeah, I don't know what to say about the wind rights issue, but I understand the concept where you're coming from with mineral rights, for example.
How come the wind issue is controversial? I mean, Bakers and the rest have been using windmills and windmills for
so it's interesting because the things that have been I personally, as somebody who does not have one of these going up right next to my property, I don't see it as very controversial at all. It seems like a very reasonable sort of thing. Now, I've seen abandoned wind farms. Out in Hawaii, when I visited at South Point on the Big Island of Hawaii, there's an abandoned wind farm there, and let me tell you, they are big eyesores. These things, when they get abandoned completely and just left in place, one or two of the blades fall off, and then you got towers standing there with two of their three blades or one of their blades and standing and rusting. That's clearly a concern. I would not want any sort of a development like this to be able to just abandon it in place. But
well, there's a solution to that. There's a solution to that too.
I think that was one of the first
that the developers have to put a certain amount aside.
Exactly.
For that kind of contingency.
And that was not really an issue here because the developers clearly put that aside or planned to put that aside initially. What the opponents were arguing was basically on two grounds. One was the noise that it would make. Now, I've been near wind farms, and there's not a lot of audible noise. At least not that I have ever heard. Now, they claim that it's in pitch frequencies that you can't hear, but it can, disturb your sleep. And a lot of that seems like very weak science to me. And, if it's a concern, yeah, it should be investigated, but the science seemed pretty weak on that. The other thing that they argued was the NIMBY argument of it's going to ruin my view. Now, out here in western Kansas, the view is dead flat and big sky. I would argue, coming from New Jersey, that what view are you talking about? But it's at least a legitimate argument. I mean, if somebody grew up with this view and they actually value that view, Yeah, I mean, it's a classic NIMBY argument. I mean, do they have any rights to that view if it's not, their land? And at least it's an intellectually honest argument, if you ask me, because that is, I can see a legitimate concern there. Although, again, it's a hard one to balance. Yeah, I guess you could be compensated for review. Some argued, that property values would be hurt by the erecting of these towers. Of course, there's the hazard situation of what if one of these things get blown over or, comes apart or explodes or something like that. Most of those are pretty easily addressed by the plans, but it gets into a legal battle and it gets held up. And, I've been here 7-8 years, and I think this thing was proposed maybe a year or two into my stay here, and it's still not been built yet. So it's one of these things that's just an ongoing sort of thing.
The view thing is kind of interesting, and we've had that around here in a lot of places based on cell towers. People say, well, it's ugly. And the thing of it is, now we live in a neighborhood where all our power lines are behind our property, so it's not, but we've got power lines and all over the place, and they're ugly as heck.
Yep.
But and we've gotten used to them.
Right.
I mean, if you would ask a person what the power lines are like on the way they drive to work each day, they couldn't tell you.
Right.
It's just something that they passed out of their mind. So it's something new, and my contention was in several discussions that I had, says, those towers are less intrusive than all those power lines running around, and but I can see if it's close by where that would be something of a problem.
I think they put in like 1,000-foot offsets. It had to be 1,000 feet back from any property that was, that had a dwelling on it, and I forget all the different things. Of course, with the wind turbines, they're more efficient the taller they are, because you get, as you get further off the ground, you get more clean, sustained wind speeds, and so. For these things to really be efficient, you want very tall towers, and you want a lot of them spaced over a wide area. That goes back to the view argument more than anything else, but also in terms of how far if the thing were to fall over.
Yeah. Well, my son is discussing this right now. He built a new house out in Arvada. It's on a mesa.
Mm-hmm.
Right up against the foothills,
mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, even though when we stay there, he has a bedroom in the basement, you think the whole house is going to go. I mean, it's windy. Now he's put solar in. I think he can generate up to 6 kilowatts,
mm-hmm.
And in the 18 months he's been there, he's generated about $7,000 worth of electricity. But he looks at all that wind and he says, now I think,
Right.
So when I was out there in February, we were looking around, and we found a turbine that is, perpendicular.
Mm-hmm.
It's doesn't have fan blades that
go
around like this.
Mm-hmm.
It spins.
Right.
Of course, the owner agreement in that area, it has to be offset enough from the property should it fall over.
Right.
It won't fall on neighbor's property, and that's kind of an issue. How high can you make it and get it efficient? Although being up on that mesa, there's nothing between him and God, and but he said he was talking to one of his neighbors. He hadn't mentioned it to anybody, and something one of his neighbors said. He said I don't think this guy would be happy if I put in a tower.
Yeah.
By the way, when I was out there, the new houses being built, they're using solar shingles.
Yeah, that's a pretty good use of technology, and if you got the sunlight, and a lot of those areas do, why not? It seems like a straightforward.
Now they're not
sort of-
generating as much as his units, which
Right.
sits up off the roof. I think he said that a typical installation gets about 3 kilowatts. But it's kind of fun to go out there and see his mirror run backwards.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I mean, not his mirror. I mean his.
Yeah. The meter. Yep.
Yeah. And he's got a little device that tells you how much he's earned each day and all that kind of stuff.
But the comparison of the wind turbines to the power lines, people know that in some way they are benefiting from the power line.
Yeah.
But with regard to the fracking and the other things, because they might not be getting a direct benefit, so they don't see why it should spoil their view. With the power lines, you know it's bringing power to your house, so no problem, I'm benefiting. But for the oil, the fracking, and the other paraphernalia that comes with it, they're not getting any payment for it. Someone else is. So
Right.
it's a sort of, you're spoiling my view, but I'm not getting any pecuniary benefits from it. So.
Well, and of course, another thing we're facing here in Ohio with all that, and they're really facing it in North Dakota, is the just the social impact of all of the building and traffic and what have you. When I did my coast-to-coast bicycle trip, I crossed North Dakota. I rode right through those oil fields.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was in '96, and there was a lot of trucks then. But now, the Adventure Cycling, which maps these routes, has actually moved its route away from that historic 1803 highway along the Missouri River, which is, the Lewis and Clark route.
Right.
And that's kind of unfortunate because that was a classic part of that ride, They've had to move it simply because of the dangers of the trucks and traffic in the areas. But the thing of it is, we all want to go to the gas pump and fill up with gasoline, but we don't want it to impact us in any way or us to be inconvenienced in any way. And we want it cheap.
It's a balancing act, and
and we don't want nuclear, not next to me. How do you want your cake and eat it too, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
In Nigeria, the Niger Delta, where it's the same sort of thing with the reality of that thing, and have been on
Akbar, we're losing your sound.
Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe if you speak a little slower. I think it's just having trouble keeping up with you. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing.
Okay. Nigeria. Those who live in the using they have to deal with the oil spills and the foul smells and the flaring, and there's not too much development there. So that's a problem. And so people living in other parts where they are actually benefiting from the heat and the oil, and they're having gas at their pump. But you don't have to live with that reality. The self-education or, all the other paraphernalia that comes with the oil industry. Without consideration for those who actually have it in their backyard.
Okay, we got a few new folks on. Ahmed and Pasquale and Sean, if any of you want to join in, feel free to ask any questions you got about geology, or you can just lurk.
I know nothing about geology.
I don't either.
Well, that scared him off. Surest way to kill a conversation is to invite somebody to say something.
It's It's not quite as boring as discussing Kantian philosophy, but
Well,
No, I'm listening to you guys.
oh, hello.
Speak up, Sean. I don't think we're hearing the real collect. Oh, okay. You're not speaking. That's the pipe, not the microphone. Gotcha.
All right.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Nice meeting
Thank you. I look forward to doing another hangout, and I'll brush up on my geology a bit because I've been doing a lot of administrative tasks. But I look forward to a really healthy geoscience-based discussion in the future.
Okay. Look for us on Monday afternoons or Monday evenings by you, and we'll be in touch in the future. Nice talking to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Bye, Lee.
bye-bye.
Easy.
All right.
Okay, Sean, you're up.
What's going on?
Oh, not too much. Any thoughts on geology or?
No, I'm just listening to what you guys are talking about and kind of Googling anything that you mentioned.
Fair enough. That's say okay. I don't really have any sort of a particular agenda to push here, so I'm just really answering questions and any sort of topic of conversation that comes up.
I got a question.
Good, fire away.
Again, where my son lives, he lives on top of a mesa.
Yep.
And it's called Spring Mesa. And right close to the top of this mesa is a spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I'm out there a couple weeks ago looking around and says, where is this water coming from? I mean, I don't see, there's hardly any land above it.
Right. Well, that was just higher up. That's got to be the answer. Whatever little land there is higher up, I guess, is probably where it's coming from.
Well, it's darn little, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have a transit or anything. I couldn't, how it's sometimes perspective is a little hard to tell, but I'm thinking, here we are up on top of this mesa. Everywhere I look is down, and here's this spring, I just now it isn't much of a spring. Of course, they've had, again, the droughts out there as well.
The mesa, that's east of the Rocky Mountain front?
Yes.
Okay. Then you're in the Denver Basin there, and that mesa is sitting up there. I
think they're about 6,200 feet there.
Right.
And then the next uplift, just to the west of them, is it's not the Flatirons right there, but it's that same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Is Arvada north or south of Denver?
Pardon?
Is it south of Denver?
It's on the northwest.
Oh, northwest. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have an idea where that is. I'm just trying to.
I can see to the north when I look north. I can see the first of the Flatirons.
Right. Right. So in that area, the Rocky Mountains have been uplifted basically along a fault.
Yeah.
It's a high-angle reverse fault there. And as part of that faulting motion, as the Rockies were uplifted, the sedimentary rocks of the Great Plains, really, were basically warped up against that. That's the Flatirons. Right? That's those steep rocks that you see, and the Morrison Road cut beautifully exposes those. But it's really fairly steeply dipping, and then that flattens out once you get just a little bit east of there. And so the mesa that he's sitting on it's part of the Denver Basin structurally, although certainly it's higher in elevation, so it's not a basin in that sense. And yeah, it would be more or less, the fact that it's a mesa, it's basically flat-lying rocks. That's characteristic of a mesa. And I don't remember the specific ages of the rocks there, but I think they're tertiary in age. There may even be volcanic rocks among those. But I don't know the area quite well enough to tell you in detail what's going on.
He's there. Of course, there's two big mesas there around Golden North Table and South Table Mountains, His is just a little bit to the north of North Table Mountain. And it's not very big mesa. I mean, it's nothing like those, and not as high as those. But it was just kind of a curiosity, and then I got to wondering, just how did those mesas come about?
Well, again, you're basically dealing with a big, thick sedimentary package that is sitting there, and the uppermost portions of that are basically sediments that were shed off of the Rockies as they were being uplifted, or off the ancestral Rockies as they were being uplifted. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even the Oglala Formation out here in Kansas is part of that, what's called a clastic wedge. And so just think about this being narrow here on the eastern end and thickening back towards the Rockies.
Okay.
All right, and it's a big pile of sediments, and in the Denver Basin, I don't know exactly what the thickness is, but it's probably 2 miles thick sedimentary rocks. Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know exactly what it is. And that whole thing was originally deposited as a basin adjacent to these mountains. What's happened is the erosion has now cut down along the Rocky Mountain front and around this mesa, so that's basically an erosional remnant of this basin, but now it's sitting as a topographic high. Mm-hmm. What's giving you that spring up on top of it is probably just some, porous sedimentary rocks up near the top, and they're probably either they're internally formed into a syncline so that you've got kind of a natural trap there, or maybe there's some sort of a structural trap that's keeping the water from draining out, is my thought. And so you probably
well, I just pulled up the terrain map on Google Maps here.
I was just going to pull up Google Maps.
And I'll have to back off a little bit because I actually do see higher ground to the west of them there.
That makes sense. I mean, it should be continuous with the mesa, would be my guess. I don't know, in detail.
Yeah,
but if you're going to have a spring, that would make the most sense.
Yeah. I see. Let me pop this up, share this with you, and show you what I'm talking about here. They live right here, and this spring is right in here, but there is higher ground back here. I can see, no, wait a minute, is that falling off? I'm not sure. So,
where is that view? Is north up in that view?
Yeah, north is up. And
I'm just trying to locate Google Earth here.
Yeah, you want me to pop to...
I'm just trying to match the lakes, that's all.
Okay. Yeah.
There it is.
I'm not sure. This contour line seems to be a higher line here, I believe.
The main thing with Google Earth is I can tilt it on edge, and we can actually see kind of what's going on. Yeah, let me share Google Earth here for a second.
Okay.
Okay, in a minute, window. Okay, now it's flashing. Those the two lakes, right?
Yeah, and they're just to the north of those lakes.
Okay.
I believe.
So I'm flying down, trying to get a view. My guess is when that stops, they're on this stretch of mesa, and my guess is that the source of that groundwater is still upslope in this direction.
It's probably more upslope than especially when you're looking up against the mountains.
Yeah.
Things look like they're downhill when they're actually uphill.
Yep. That'd be my guess, best guess.
I had an interesting experience like that when I was, I just left the Columbia River and I was bicycling up to Walla Walla, Washington, up being the key word.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped at this little restaurant. Oh, it was about 30 miles west of Walla Walla.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to talk to this woman here, and I said, well, I'm going to try to spend the night in Walla Walla before I go on. And she says, oh, it's great. You're going to have a downhill ride all the way. Now, she'd lived around there all her life.
Right.
So I take off on my bike, and oh, sure enough, this is downhill. And I think, man, I'm getting tired. And a couple times I thought, well, it's a little downhill stretch here. I'm going to coast. And I'd come to a stop.
Yeah.
and what I would, finally I stopped maybe to take a leak or something. I turned around and looked back and says, holy crap.
Yeah.
I've been climbing a hill all this time. And of course, she didn't know. I mean, she drove it in a car. She didn't notice it, you know. I mean, you can't tell. But that's probably what was going on with me. I said, well, that's downhill, and it's probably an upslope.
I've been to one of those mirage. Well, it's not a mirage, but those kind of trickery things.
Magnetic hills or something.
Yeah, exactly. Back in the eastern U.S., where again, you think that the slope is going one way, but you park the car and you put it in neutral, and it starts drifting the other way.
There's a place like that in New Brunswick.
Yeah. They
call it Magnetic Hill, and we stopped there, and Sonia said, I said, well, heck no. I said, that's downhill. Can't you? I says, just walk up there a ways and look back, you know.
Yeah.
Yep. That was what was it? All in the Family, he used to call it an optical conclusion.
Yes. Yes. Those were the days.
Yep. So if I'd had a level there, could done a little sighting, I could say, well, heck, I see where that water is coming from.
I was always amazed as a kid. I got my hands on a pair of binoculars, and when you are in the back seat of the car, looking out the front window with binoculars, everything, of course, is telescoped, so it's all a lot closer to you. And all of a sudden, you're looking down the road that you thought was absolutely flat, and you can see the hills. You know, it's not big hills. It's just gentle changes in slope, but things that you had no idea of just from natural visual perception that you begin to see when it becomes distorted for you.
Well, you ride a bike across them, you'll know there's hills in there. You'll find that out real quick. Yeah. Well, so you're here on Monday afternoons. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I've been trying to do it weekly. The last couple of weeks I've had, because I'm in the process of trying to sell my house here, so I've been busy with getting stuff boxed and moved and stuff like that.
So you have a job elsewhere? Are you looking for a job elsewhere?
I'm still looking, but I've got an interview coming up end of April, so we'll see, hopefully. But the house payments have got to go, so.
Yeah.
Jamie, Doak, welcome. We're probably just winding down a little bit. I'm getting up toward an hour and a half, so if you got some questions, some thoughts, squeeze them into 10 minutes here, would you?
I didn't have anything specific. I just hadn't been by in a while.
I am recording. We had a really nice conversation earlier about Nigerian geology, and then what did we get into after that? Fracking and wind farms and NIMBYs and things like that. And I don't know. Of course, it's been a wide-ranging discussion, but.
Oh, I see you saw Dana's post on the Scientific American blog as well.
Yeah. Did you have a chance to read that?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to go through it all. I just saw it was posted there. Yeah, that's exciting.
It took me about an hour and a half to read it, not because it's a long or hard post to read, but because I kept getting interrupted by other things. But it's a great post, and I'm glad to see she's got that gig.
See, I would never have the confidence to do what she does. I mean, she's not a professional geologist. She's just very enthusiastic about it. I wouldn't
But
feel
she's also
qualified to write about anything.
she's been, real. She's got a lot of curiosity there, and she's actually been sticking with things. I mean, she'll track things down. She'll go and look up research papers. I mean, it's really what you want in a student.
Right.
She's definitely got the fire in her belly to learn the stuff. So, yeah, that's great. And it's great to have people communicating this that maybe still recognize when they're getting into jargon. I mean, that's one of the things as a professor. When I was a very young professor, I still remembered kind of what was jargony and what wasn't. The more you go on in time, the more you begin to drop phrases and just assume, I've been teaching this for 20 years. You think you would have learned it by now. But of course, it's always a fresh class of students, and they don't magically learn what you've been teaching for the last 20 years.
Yeah, all of us that have some profession can get caught in that trap very easily.
Yeah.
And just assume everybody understands what the heck you're saying. And
plus, just Dana's enthusiasm for the subject is great. I mean, she's living in a great part of the world where you can actually go and see stuff. That helps a lot. I'm sure when you get excited about geology here in Kansas, it wouldn't be the same sorts of volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff that's fun to talk about. It would be a little bit more of the chalk and paleontology and things like that, which I guess could be exciting too, but doesn't happen to me.
Yeah, I mean, but for somebody like me, it's fun to read. Like, she's just trying to figure all this stuff out. I can't remember what it was. Now I can't remember the name of the geologic formations, but she had that picture of, I guess I see it as like hills and valleys and what the names of the peaks and the valleys were, and where you can tell the two coming together. And it's almost about her excitement about learning it all as much as it is the geology itself.
And that's great, and I'm glad she's communicating that, because that is really, really good. I think actually she's not been able to make the office hours because her work schedule's changed. I know she had tweeted, or maybe her Google Plus post actually said that she was off to work, and that was just before I got started. So disappointed we haven't seen her here in a while. But, yep. Well, that's worth a read. I put, if you hadn't seen Dana's article yet, I posted that in the Google Plus, the prelude to this Hangout session. So go look that one up. It's worthwhile reading it if you get a chance. Anything else on your minds? Because I'm getting hungry. I still got to mow the lawn after dinner too.
How old is the world?
The Earth? 4.5 billion years. Based on, 4.5 billion years ballpark, based on, various different decay systems.
give or take a billion, huh?
What's that? Well, yeah, give or take a billion, and then, you got all kinds of, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of that, there's all kinds of news. In fact, there was just an article in, I saw a summary of it, I guess, in like New Scientist or something like that, that is getting back at
uranium decay, right? I think I saw the
same thing. Well, it turns out that maybe the uranium ratio of 238 to 235 is not exactly what we had always thought it was. We've always known that there are special instances in which it can vary, but apparently it's a little bit more variable than was once assumed. And that has a minor effect on the actual ages that you produce. And so in fact, I did my PhD thesis with uranium-lead age dating of zircons. And, for all those ages, I think it's 137.88 is the ratio of uranium-238 to 235. And that was always something that you just assumed. We could have measured it. It would have been pretty straightforward to actually take a measurement of it. Because the mass spectrometer does exactly that sort of thing, measures the ratios of the isotopes. But is one of those things that we always took as being a constant and never bothered to measure for individual samples. And I guess the more recent article here suggests that it actually may, at least for very old samples, may actually make a difference to actually measure that. And then there were some other things. I think one of the other things was samarium neodymium dating issue that was also potentially affecting the ages. So yeah, but those are little changes around the edges by and large. You know, the age of the Earth being established at about 4.5 billion years old, 4.66, 4.65, something like that is, I think, 4.57 plus or minus 0.05, something like that.
This raises a question. Assuming that the Earth was not there one day and was there the next.
Well, it was rapid geologically, but probably not one day and the next.
Yeah, but apparently this happened fairly rapidly.
Yeah, geologically it did. The understanding of the origin of the solar system, as I understand it, probably the best video, if you want to watch a video to see the kind of state of the art on this, is Nova put out a series of 4 videos called the Origins series. So if you go to PBS Nova and go to Origins, Earth is Born is the one that covers origin of the solar system and the origin of the planet Earth.
Saw that video.
What's that?
I've seen that video.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one in that what I would normally have taught in class with a lot of arm waving, it actually gives you a lot of actual video to show it. At any rate, yeah, the timing of planetary accretion is thought to be on the order of 10 million years or less, and I want to say anywhere down to possibly hundreds of thousands of years.
Wow.
It's a very rapid process from a geological standpoint, the actual origin of an earthly planetary body. There's certainly modification of that. I mean, I would not say, it's the Earth as we know it today 4.5 billion years ago. It's very much a planet that's evolved considerably during that 4.5 billion years. You still got meteorite bombardment. You still got incoming materials. So it's not completely there. But, maybe 98, 99% of the mass accretes within a very short period of time.
So, and again, we're getting into astronomy rather than geology.
Yeah, it's kind of geology. It's on the outside edge of it.
It's my understanding that the meteorite bombardment has diminished dramatically.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, after a lot of this material collected.
Right. I mean, the original formation of the planet is basically all meteorite bombardment. It is all these meteorites coming together, establishing a gravitational field. And then the early history of the solar system is basically these protoplanets sweeping out their orbits,
just kind of sucking
up the debris, sucking up the debris. And this is how you define a planet in the modern day, is whether it's cleared its orbit of debris. This is why the asteroids, for example, are not considered planets, even though there are some almost planet-sized bodies in their series, for example. The orbit has not been cleared of debris. That's one of the criterion for establishing whether you got a planet or not. Of course, where all that debris came from, in the case of the asteroids, it might have been a protoplanet that got blown to smithereens, or who knows. But yeah, meteorite bombardment would theoretically have been much higher early on. There's an early heavy bombardment period in the Earth's history, and then it's decreased through time. You still get the odd wayward body coming in, like the one that would have been the Cretaceous-Tertiary boundary extinction of the dinosaurs, possibly linked to that, 66 million years ago. And small stuff comes in all the time. So, yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, that's...
But if you look at, crater density on the moon, for example, or any other planetary body that you're able to observe craters on. That's one of the ways that you establish, the relative ages. Once you can go out and actually collect samples from the moon and date them, you can begin to see, how old certain surfaces are. And then you can look at the density of craters on a 4 billion-year-old surface versus a 3.8 billion-year-old surface. It begins to tell you something about, how much material is coming in this part of the solar system.
I look at that. I think it's NOAA, the astronomy picture of the day.
Yeah.
They put a different picture up every day. And not too long ago, they had a video depiction of the development of the moon.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
It was a cool video, but I think the one thing that I would have been critical about it was that they showed it very episodically. So that they showed that there was a very heavy bombardment early on, but then it was like, they would talk about something else coming, but there wouldn't be continual bombardment in there. And so if you're watching it with the sound off, or you weren't paying attention to the the text that was coming up, you could have gotten the impression that it was very periodic, that you would have had a big bombardment, then it stopped for a while, and it came back on for a while.
Well, that's the impression I got.
Yeah, I thought that was, there may be some periodicity to it, but I don't think as dramatic as what they showed. Of course, they were also, condensing time there vastly.
But
so
I think it was a nice, I'm just, a farmer who's trying to learn.
Well, I've always viewed that as being a more continuous process. So yes, you're decreasing in intensity of the meteor bombardment, but I viewed it as a more continuous process on a long-term scale. There's probably some cyclicity to it, but I can't think of why it would be as dramatic as what the video suggested.
I did a search. I found that video on the beginnings of the Earth, or whatever it's called. I got it pulled it aside here to watch later when we get out of here.
Yeah.